Okay, yes, it is. Good evening. The North Rock School District Office of the Superintendent agenda for this evening at the regular Board of Education Administration Office at 2400 Willow Street in North Little Rock, Arkansas. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the meeting will be held via Zoom video conference for participants. Viewers will be able to watch VA North Rock Facebook page live stream Thursday, July 16th, 2020, 5:34 p.m. At this time, we are open for public comments. Mrs. Colquitt?
Before, Madam Chair, recording, but I don't see, it doesn't look like we're Facebook Live yet. We're recording, but we're not live. There we go.
Do I have to start over?
Was there any public comment?
Mr. Staggers, do you have anyone in the waiting room? Jennifer Kavanaugh or Mr. Jeff Wacom? Okay, Mr. Wacom.
Yes, ma'am.
Public comments?
Are you ready for me, ma'am?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that. We've been out of school and preparing for a new year in a COVID world for 18 weeks now, since March 13th. And as of now, just a month before we're ordered to start school, administration dumps on the teachers and on building administrators a new plan for reopening without even asking many of the teachers or staff any of their opinions on this. It's disappointing. It's very disappointing. Didn't ask middle school teachers or the high school teachers or any of the administrators on what they thought would work best at their individual campuses, if there was something in particular that could help there. Instead, your director of secondary education, who's been on the job for all of a month, said over a Zoom meeting, this is what the teachers will do and they'll fall in line. That's not what a leader does. That's not how you should approach this. This is a situation where you've got many people who not only have a master's degree, but a doctorate degree, and are the ones that are actually there, your boots on the ground, actually doing the job. That's who you should be asking. You shouldn't be declaring a plan and sending it over to them. It's on y'all's agenda today to come in and say, this is our reopening plan, which has been moved, thank you, Governor, for 2 weeks. But we've only had 18 weeks for you to plan this, and yet nobody has bothered to call and ask. Now we have some real questions. What happens to our teachers when they decide not to show up? What happens to our 6,000 students that we have in our district when there's not a teacher there because they put their families ahead of my children? And by the way, I don't blame them for doing that. What are you going to do with COVID exposures? You have one child that comes into your middle school or your high school, go to 7 different classes. I'm using the middle school because they still have 7 periods. And now they've exposed 7 different teachers and 20 to 30 different students in each and every one of those classes to COVID. What are you going to do then? Where are you going to come up with the substitutes for this? What are you going to do there when you have a teacher that's lost for 2 weeks because of potential exposure? What do you do whenever you have a known student that is positive, shows up and just dropped off at the doorstep, and you call their parent and they don't come because if you're lucky and have their number because they haven't updated it in 3 years, then what? Are you going to call it DHS for a maltreatment registry issue? Are you going to call the police on that? I don't understand where we're going to do on this. And none of this is included in your plan for reopening. If you've lost 7 teachers because one kid goes through that's positive, you've got 7 teachers out the next day. What are you going to do whenever everybody comes in the next day? And suddenly we're consolidating classes for the kids that are still there because now we're down 7 teachers. What's going to happen then? What are we going to do for their sick pay? Is that included in there? It's not. I've looked at your proposal on this. You had 18 weeks to come up with it. And this is what you're coming up with. This is ridiculous. Us as parents are wondering, what are we going to do? I can't sit there and send my kid to the school and have these known exposures like that in good conscience. And I can't blame a teacher for deciding, oh, hey, let's not. Because their kids are more important. 18 weeks of this. This is what you come up with. You don't ask the administrators on that. I'm disappointed. A leader says, let's go. Just a boss says, hey, go. Be leaders on this. Ask for input from your people. They know this. They're your boots on the ground. Why aren't you doing it? I don't understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walken. Our next public speaker, Mrs. Colquitt.
Mrs. Jennifer Kavanaugh.
Mrs. Kavanaugh.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chairperson and Board. Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, if y'all haven't caught up on the news today, let's see, we have football games canceled. UAPB has already canceled their football game 2 months away. ASU canceled their September game. These people are making decisions and for 2 months out, and we're trying to bring kids to school. I mean, really, people. Okay, so since we love football in North Little Rock and we love athletics, let's do this. Your A team is sitting in the locker room. They're on the bench. Someone has guarded the door, won't let them out, and the fans are in the stands going, where's our team? Where's our people? Why are we losing? Who's holding the door? Why don't we get them out and put them to work? We're not using our wonderful professionals that are in our district that we know can do a job. We're bringing in people from wherever who have very loose ties to come in and say, hey, this is how you should open. I mean, really. So here are my comments. Hold on just a second.
Which one?
To the creator of the reopening task force, you have told us two things. By not including your key district personnel, the frontline people, your teachers, your building administrators, not bringing them to the table and letting them work, you've told them that their opinion doesn't matter, that they don't possess the skills to open our schools and to do what's better. You've told them they don't matter and that they're not professional enough to do the job. Now, you've told us parents of the district that you have a vote of no confidence in your teachers and that we shouldn't have confidence in them. And I know that is not what you board members want to tell the wonderful staff at North Little Rock that have educated two of my children and are almost done with the last one. You have told us not to have confidence in the very people that I know have the skills to do. You have put them in the locker room and shut the door and said, you can't play. Let them out. Everybody sitting there knows exactly the players in this district who could sit in a room and have a plan in a week. And you know it. I know it. So let's let them do their job, the job we pay them, and quit bringing in all these people who, I mean, they're great. They're great people, but they're not our people. They're not the people who belong at the table. And your high school and your elementaries have way different needs. And you know it, I know it, and we need to address it. Please, let's get this done. If they are canceling football games in the South, it's important. Our children are more important. Our staff is more important. Our health is more important. And I want my senior to have a senior year in person, but I also want her alive. So I'm not going to make that decision. And there are many other parents who are not going to make a decision between two awful choices when there should be a lot more choices and we have more specifics. So please, board, expect more from the people we pay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennifer, for your comments. Board members do not address comments, but what we do, we will take everything that you and Mr. Walken said in consideration, and thank you for your time. At this time, I'll officially call the meeting to order. Dr. Redis, would you read the mission statement and the vision statement, please?
Sure. Excuse me. The mission statement: the North Little Rock School District and the community will provide for achievement, accountability, acceptance, and the necessary assets in the pursuit of each student's educational success. The vision statement is world-class schools for world-class students.
Thank you. Ms. Copeland, would you call the roll, please?
Sandy Campbell, Elizabeth Huggins,
Here.
Rochelle Redis,
Here.
Tracy Steele, Cindy Temple,
Natalie.
Here.
Dorothy Williams.
Here. Thank you. And we do have a quorum of 5 board members. At this time, we'll have the disposition of minutes of the prior meeting. May I have a board member to please make a motion?
Madam President, I move to accept the disposition of the minutes prior meetings of June 18th, June 25th.
A second, please.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the disposition of the minutes from a prior meeting held June 18th, June 25, both on page 5 and 9. Those in favor say aye.
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 The motion has been carried. Thank you. At this time, as for our action business, we have Mr. Scott Beardsley from Beardsley Finance to come to the board with an election document on page 11. Mr. Beardsley, would you come in now?
Thank you very much. What you have before you is what we discussed during the workshop. The district is required to publish a notice of what's going to be on the ballot in November. And so you're giving the voters 60 days notice that you were not asking for any change in the millage or the term, and that you're giving them a look at your proposed budget for the 21-22 school year. It's a statutory requirement, and you're just meeting the requirement. It requires board action. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, at this time, Ms. Walker, would you read the motion to accept the proposed budget for the school board?
You mean read all pages? I move that we accept the attached proposed budget of the expenditures. Turn your volume down. With tax of the fiscal year beginning July.
Would it be easier if I read it?
Can that be?
All right. The motion before the board that is in your packets is to adopt the attached proposed budget of expenditures with tax levy for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 to and including June 30th of 2022, and to approve all related election documents.
Second. Unmute, Madam President.
Okay. It was moved and properly seconded by Dr. Redis. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? None, so the motion is carried. Thank you
very much.
Beardsley. Okay, at this time, Dr. McGee, you will come with the consent agenda, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam President and members of the board. Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to come Madam President, if you would permit me just to, before I ask for the approval of the consent agenda, I just want to reach out and say thank you to all of us, if you'll permit me, Madam President, to do this, say thank you to all of our staff, central office staff, building staff, teachers, parents, and even our whole staff as a whole. I just want to thank them for their participation in the cupcakes and conversations that have taken place over the previous couple of weeks. So I want to make that known, and we'll get down a little later in with our other actions. So, Madam President, we're coming tonight for the consent agenda, asking for approval for monthly financial reports, business office items, and the payment of regular bills.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the consent agenda for the monthly financial reports, business office items, building use requests, and payment of regular bills presented by Dr. McGee.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the consent agenda from Dr. McGee for the past month of July. Those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. The motion has been carried. At this time, Dr. Smith, Executive Director of Human Resources, you will come in for the administrative transfers, okay? Okay.
Yes, ma'am, Madam President. Thank you for having me this evening, and thank you, members of the board. We ask you guys that you would approve the administrative transfers and all other employment of personnel.
Jacob, I have a question real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
One of our teachers made a big deal via social media and public comment regarding how she needed to leave the school district, but I do not see her name on the agenda presented to us tonight. So I just want to make sure that she was not skipped over, and that if she truly put in her resignation because she truly is leaving our district, we need to follow up on that and expect the paperwork from her. And I can email you the name. I'm not going to say it aloud since we're Facebook Live, but just know that we're missing someone who formally put in their resignation via Facebook Live, via public comment. Okay, I just want you to note that.
Yes, ma'am. We submit the board agenda over a week sometimes in advance in regards to our personnel. And so that's why we have moved it up during the summer to do that special meeting before every board workshop, so we can continue that cycle and make sure all the names are as up to date as we possibly can keep them. So yeah, absolutely. Shoot me that email and I will make sure that they are on the next board agenda.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, I so move to accept the presented agenda of transfers, resignations, and new hires that Dr. Smith has presented to us.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we accept the transfer of administrative and other employment personnel classified and licensed. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The motion is carried. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for that. At this time, Dr. McGee, the resolution for safety guidelines during the COVID-19 pandemic. The North Rock resolution is for safety guidelines during this, and it is on page 98, board members.
Good. Thank you, Madam President, for this time to come with the resolution. We created a resolution to ask the board to approve to require all students and staff to wear the face cloth. However, since that time we have created this resolution, the city of North Little Rock has created orders and passed the orders. And since that time today, our governor has announced that he will sign an executive order that will make sure that mandate face cloth. So, however, there is some exemption in the governor's announcement, and that one exemption is 10 and under. So we're asking that you approve of this resolution to require all students and staff. However, we acknowledge that we would maybe have to amend our resolution that 10 and under are exempt. But however, we will strongly encourage them to wear that mask.
Okay. Board members, do you have a statement before we make a motion on this resolution?
I do have a question for Dr. McGee. How are we going to mandate it, regulate to make sure that they're worn?
In the resolution, it outlines that the building administrator will have consequences are outlined in there with they can follow the handbook in terms of disciplinary action. Nice. For the students and for the staff, they also can be able to move progressive discipline through that as well.
Thank you.
Steele, did you have a comment?
Madam President?
Yes.
I have a question, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Superintendent, how are we going to, monitors and give the teachers the ability to verbally communicate with their students while the teachers are up in front of students? Are they taking their masks completely off while they're talking or presenting to the children? And then I have a quick follow-up question.
Yes, we are going to follow the guidance of the Arkansas Department of Health and CDC, as well as the Governor ADE. So if they're beyond 12 feet, they can take their mask off. We have already placed the order to order face shield for every teacher. We have roughly, I think 708, maybe 1,300, 1,000 teachers, but we're going to order face shield for everyone. Teachers also will have a mobile plexiglass that they can put in front of while they're teaching in the front of the classroom that they can stand behind, so that they can take their mask and face guard off.
Okay, thank you very much. And my next question is regarding the lunch period and when the children eat. How much time do the children have between the time they take their masks off and eat? Is it as soon as they finish eating? Should they put their mask back on? And will we have somebody monitoring that?
Yes, both elementary and secondary directors are doing what they call standard operating procedure for every building. We are going to do, again, stay with the guidance from those that I mentioned above. Yes, they would take their mask off, eat, then as soon as they finish, they would have to put their mask back on. We're going to work out those details and to ensure that everybody's complying with the directives and from the governor is the city orders as well as our resolution. And that is some of that is still being worked out at the building level.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments from board members before we make this other motion?
Yeah, so just to clarify, we're not requiring 10 and under to wear masks?
That is the governor's announcement. He announced in his executive order, and one of the exemption is 10 and under. They are exempt from wearing. And the executive order will supersede anyone's resolution or even one city ordinance, to my knowledge.
Okay, this is a rhetorical question, but so why would we require the 5th graders to wear them and not kindergarten through 4th grade? I mean, I know that's not yours, but I'm just putting that out there.
And Dr. McGee, I would like to go ahead and keep the resolution as written, that it's going to be K through 12. And honestly, I'd rather deal with the governor if needed on that basis, that he says something or Mr. Keys comes to our door, so to say. I would much rather accept the motion written as is, K through 12, wearing the face mask, and then we will deal with the consequences if there are any. Just my 2 cents.
Okay, well, there are comments from the board. On mute.
Well, on the mask, I'm kind of trying to get some clarification. I think Ms. Huggins raises a good point. Are we talking about exactly 10 years of age and older? Because some kids' birthday comes at a different time. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying any of the children can wear masks. This is just a requirement if they have to wear masks or not.
Correct. Our resolution requires all students, K-12, to wear face covering. The executive order that I am reference to, that the governor mentioned today's press conference, one exemption that he mentioned, there are numerous exemptions, but the one that he mentioned is the executive order, and I'm reading verbatim. The executive order provides exemption for persons younger than 10 years of age. So that is 10 and younger, they are exempt from wearing the face cloth. It is our position that we want everyone to wear the face cloth. It is in the best interest in my position that, in my professional opinion, that everybody comply to wear the face cloth at all times. That is how we minimize the spread. So those who will be on campus, then we would like for them to wear the face cloth.
Madam Chair, me personally.
A lot of work with Ms. Redis. Can I just think of? Thank you so much. Just so I get out of the way. What about on the bus? Are face masks required on the school bus as well?
Correct. We want them to wear the face mask anytime they get from the school, at the bus stop, on the way. I would prefer on the way to the stop, on the bus, walking into school to their classroom, all the way to lunch. Same thing on the way home.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Redis.
And I believe the school bus would be considered public, and that's part of the mandate that they have to have on a face mask. But I'm personally ready to vote that we keep it as is and move forward.
Okay. May I have a motion for that, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the 2021 North Florida School resolution for safety guidelines during the COVID-19 that was presented by Dr. McGee, that's on page 98.
Second.
Second, it's been moved and properly second that we move forward on the proposal by Dr. McGee for the resolution for safety guidelines in the COVID-19. Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And opposed? None. So the motion is carried. Thank you. At this time, we have Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Board, for that approval on that. This is the MOU that Shorter College brought to us back in 2016. The board initially approved of an MOU where Shorter College can work with, and to my understanding, and there may be somebody that's here that was here prior to me, that he wanted to work with the high school and the academy on those kids who may be undecided and going to college, where they can get off of concurrent credit. So per my meeting with Dr. Green, he would like to now pick this back up. I don't think he had a chance to get it off the ground and running. I presented this MOU at the workshop. So we're asking just approval that Dr. Green can work with those schools and those counselors to see if any of those kids would be interested in getting concurrent credit to attend Shorter College.
Are there any questions, board members?
I do have a quick question. How is the COVID going to affect that?
That's a great question, Ms. Redis, Dr. Redis. And that is something that we would just have to work through with Dr. Green and the participating schools and their building principals and counselors.
Okay. I was just curious.
May I have a motion, please?
So move.
Okay. A second, please.
Second.
Okay, moved and properly second that we accept the MOU from Shorter College, that they will continue to work with the academy as well as the high schools for those students that are in need and cannot afford other colleges. Those in favor, do I need to call the roll? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. So the motion is carried. So Dr. McGee, Thank you for that. And at this time, we will have the employee handbook presented by Dr. Smith. There you are. You may begin, Ms. Dr. Smith.
Yes, ma'am. So at the board workshop, I brought you guys the employee handbook. I encouraged anybody to reach out with me with corrections. I had some corrections issued to me, and the copy that you have received has those corrections in place. There was one other correction after we put this out to you guys in the board packet, and it's just a tense change underneath our mission and vision. We're changing the verbiage from will to is to. And so very minor change, but I wanted to bring it to your guys' attention. Also, from the perspective of my department, ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge team effort. And I just want to thank my two generalists, Sonia Strickland and Delandria Traylor. They offer me complete support, and they are literally my rock. And they, through this time, they have fielded questions from our faculty and staff, and they have just absolutely put in way more hours than I deserve. And I could not do anything I do out of my office without the support of them. And they are a large part of this document, and a lot of the work on the front end was put in by them. And so I want to thank them, and ask the board to approve this tonight.
Questions from board members, please. I have some. I have two. Am I putting anybody out? Did a board member want to speak before I did? Okay, thank you. Question, Dr. McGee. You had in your packet 8 hours, and really, if you look at it, it's supposed in the policy that they're supposed to work 7 point. What was that, Dr. McGee?
But thank you, Madam President. What she's referring to, Dr. Smith, is in board policy 3.29.2. The concern is that in our handbook it says 8 hours, but the policy says 7.37 3/4 hours. Not to exceed 8 hours if they have the meeting, if I'm not mistaken. That's what it reads.
Because you read the policy.
Correct.
And yes.
Okay.
Correction. And also, now I'm gonna ask you this. You told me about your staff. You all did a phenomenal job, and we discussed that. Now, did the LPPC and did the non-classified and classified personnel, did they have a part in this?
No, ma'am, they did not. This is like anything else that we use within the district as far as our policies are concerned. This is a form, is the best way to say this. This is a recapitulation of our policies. And so much like our contracts, our vacation forms, our disciplinary forms, none of those are passed by the LPPC or CPPC because it is not new policies. And so this is just a statement of the policies that have already been voted on by the LPPC and the CPPC and the board.
Okay, clarity then. I want you to say that again. Because
yes,
out of courtesy, we always give them an input, an insight, because they are not unionized, but that's a courtesy. So would you explain that again to George Williams so that I can have a better understanding of it? I'm sure the other board members, the way you said it, because I wouldn't want to pass something that I didn't have a clarity on, okay? Would you state that again for me, Dr. Smith?
Yes, ma'am. This document is nothing that has not been put before it does not represent anything that has not been put before the board or the LPPC or the CPPC in the past. All of these policies are just a recapitulation in different language to make sure that this document guides everybody that is employed by the North Little Rock School District about how our policies function and where they can find those policies. And so this acts as an abbreviated version of our policies that our employees are already at the behest of by the signing of their contract.
Is it a clarity to board members? Are there questions? Some of you had that look on your face. Mr. Steele.
Well, yes, I just have a question. If there have been no changes, then I mean, why do we need this? Are you?
Let me see if I can answer
If they okay, and then before you answer, Dr. McGee, if there would have been changes, is the policy to actually put it before the committee, both committees?
The policy, sir. The policy
or tradition or rule, however you want to state it. The LPPC committee, my understanding, they usually, in my experience, they usually see it. But I think are you saying there was no changes? That's why they didn't see it?
Yes, sir. What I'm trying to communicate is that this is just an abridged document of our policies. And so for form and fashion, we've put it in the language that is easily understood. You're easily able to find and reference the policies that already exist instead of having to thumb through 360-ish pages of policy. And so this puts kind of the meat of what we are trying to accomplish in a very usable format that an employee during an onboarding process would be able to be given this. They would be able to read this before they ever sign any documentation, and they'd have a clear understanding of the expectations and our policies and procedures before they ever leave the onboarding process.
Mr. Steele and board members, let me see if I can maybe add that would probably help provide some type of clarification with this. Let me echo what Mr. Smith just indicated. This is just the abbreviated version of the board policies that pertain to staff in regards how they perform their job. So that's all it is. It's the board policies that we have taken from the board policies that mimic, that falls in line to help deal with the performances of the employees. So I think that's all it is, and that he's referring to when he says policies.
Excuse me then. If it's something that you abbreviated, how did you change the hours that teachers work from 8 hours to 7.5 hours? How did that happen?
Let me tackle that question as well. We had initially talked about a board employee handbook. However, prior to Dr. Smith coming on board, the work was already done. So we tried to finish the work. And it was an overlap on our behalf to make sure that everything fall in line with our policy.
Okay, board members, well, if you still got that 8 hours in there and our policy is 7.5 hours, I have a conflict with that.
We'll make sure we get that changed. We have no problem getting that changed.
You know, if we vote on it, it's still saying 8 hours, because I'm sure teachers would have that saying like 8 hours, but the policy said if board members make policy, we as a board need to follow those policies. So how did you say you're gonna amend to that, Dr. Smith?
We will make the correction, ma'am. You guys, tonight, if you choose to act, then you could approve this with that change.
Okay, board members, may I have a motion, please? Nobody?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Ms. Temple?
Yes.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello. I had trouble getting in, so my bad. I vote that we accept the employee handbook with the adjustment for the hours to 7.5, or I move that we do that.
Okay, second?
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the Executive North Rock Employees Handbook with the amending from the 8 hours to going back to the 7.5 hours. Those in favor say aye.
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 Let me call the roll, please. So I won't miss anyone on this. This is very important. Ms. Temple, I'm calling the roll.
Yes.
Ms. Walkham?
Yes.
Pardon me? Yes.
Okay, Mr. Steele?
No.
Okay. Ms. Huggins?
Yes.
And I'm Dorothy Williams. And Ms.
Yeah, don't
Reddish,
forget Dr. Reddish.
Dr. Reddish.
Yes.
Okay, yes? Okay,
Yes. Yes.
I say yes, with the changing of the amendment. And by the way, Dr. Smith, so we said the motion has been carried. So therefore we accept your handbook, director, you will accept the final document with the changes, amended changes in the handbook. And also, Dr. Smith, very strong believer in the LPPC and the non-classified and the classified, that they have a part. I don't care if it's changes or not. As a common courtesy, they're still employees in this district. And we need to treat them fair and equitable. And the only way they can be done is that they're on board and in part of everything. Thank you for all that you and your staff did, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Madam President, members of the board, if I can just come in for just a brief moment on that. We want the board to know that we highly value our LPPC and CPP and all of our staff as well. We want to continue to work with them, and we're looking forward to working with them as we continue to move our district forward.
All right, and thank you. And after that is done. But I just want to let you know that the board supports everybody in the district. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will have Ms. Rhodes Newburn. She's gonna come with the curriculum of instruction on the policy update section. Ms. Newburn, are you there?
Madam Chair, we skipped one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Smith, you still on duty?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, I understand.
Okay, 2021 instructional assistant salary schedule on page 148.
Yes, ma'am. Whenever we came and passed the salary schedules, this was a clerical error. The 8% for the associate's degree left off. All of the salary schedules that address the bachelor's 10% have an 8% associate's degree percentage on them. And we are asking that the board correct this miscite and add the 8% to this salary schedule as well. It is already in practice, and Ms. Wonkum asked during the board workshop if it would cost us any money. Finance has communicated that this is already built into our current salaries and budget.
Okay. May I have a motion, please?
Madam President,
Yes.
I move we approve the change, the correction.
Okay. Second.
Second. Second.
Second.
Properly second that we accept the salary change on the schedule for instructional assistant that's on page 148. Those in favor say aye.
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 And aye. Okay, the motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Smith, you on for anything else before I move on?
No, ma'am, not till later in the night.
Okay, then, thank you. Okay, Ms. Newburn?
Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Newburn is not here. So we asked that we would delay her this section into the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. At this time, Mr. Stone on legal transfers. Would you come in, Mr. Stone?
Madam President and members of the board, I don't think Mr. Stone is here. We sincerely apologize that is oversight on us, and we would look to honor the legal transfer at the next board meeting.
And there's still time, be ample time for that?
I will have to get back with the board on that, and I would follow up with Mr. Stone.
Okay, then. At this time, Mr. Hatch, would you come in, please? We're dealing with Middleton Heat and Air demonstration and replacement at Crestwood Elementary for the price of $172,000. Mr. Hatch.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good evening, ma'am. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you.
Members of the board, Doc McGee, what you have in your board package is a proposal from Middleton Heat and Air to replace the fresh air unit on the C wing of Crestwood Elementary. That is now, we used to call it the new wing, but that is now the old wing of Crestwood Elementary. The unit that is currently up there is a very problematic unit. It takes in water where it shouldn't, and it honestly, it doesn't perform what it needs to do in today's modern ASHRAE standards, if you will. Those are the standards that dictate fresh air going into the building. And so we need to update this unit. It is old, it is outdated, and that's why we have this proposal for you.
Okay. Board members, could I have a motion on this proposal for?
Madam President, quick question. Mr. Hatch, how old is that unit?
That unit is as old as that wing. It was installed 2007.
Is Temple?
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple questions. One is, did we do competitive bids, or did we just go with Middleton Heating Air because that's who we use?
No, ma'am. This was an emergency. We needed to get this unit on order. It has an 8-week lead time, and Middleton Heating Air is Tips Taps.
Other questions from the board?
Replace that unit with.
Come in.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, one more question. I know that we are going to have somebody come look at what actually happened. Putting that new unit in, is that going to interfere with them being able to see what happened, how the water got in?
No, ma'am, because that's going to happen before that unit gets here. That unit's not slated to get here until about mid-August.
Are there other questions from board members? Mrs. Steele?
Ma'am, I move that we approve the air-conditioned unit at Crestwood Elementary.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we approve for the Middleton Heating and Air replacement at Crestwood Elementary for the sum of $172,979.93. Those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so the motion is carried. Any nays? No. The motion is carried. Thank you. Mr. Hatch, you're still on for the Robert McNutt pressure washing waterproofing walls at Crestwood.
Yes, ma'am. This is another proposal that you have before you to actually waterproof the exterior envelope of the building. That includes all the brick veneer, and it includes going below the grade level where we discovered that there is no waterproofing membrane on the foundation. This foundation is a crawl space foundation. And because there's no waterproofing there, we have actually had water get into the crawl space on top of the paper barrier that is under there. And it is not a healthy environment in that crawl space whatsoever.
Okay.
So,
could we have a motion, a question first from the board members?
Madam President?
Yes.
I do have a question. If I could be permitted to ask a question, I don't mean to deviate, but Madam President, you know that little flooding down there at Glenview Elementary, was that ever taken care of down by where the kindergarten kids are?
No.
I would like, ma'am, I can speak to that.
Okay, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Steele. We have discovered exactly what's going on with that flooded area.
That was a big mystery where that water was coming from.
It was actually, they are in the process of jackhammering up the sidewalk outside that door, and we have found a duct that comes off of the downspout has collapsed. And so all the water that was going through that downspout was actually backing up through it, and it found its way inside the building. And Baldwin and Shell is doing this gratis. So.
Okay, and Baldwin and Shell has been at the field continuously, and they have torn out the walls and moved furniture because all the schools had that problem, but theirs was with the doors. When we first built this school, it was leakage under there, but they were able to fix those. But as you say, Mr. Hatch has spoken, it's something more severe before the moles get in it. And thank you, Mr. Steele, for addressing that. All right, and could we get a motion on this, the Robert McNutt pressure wash and waterproofing wall at Crestwood?
Madam President, can I ask a question?
Question?
What's the timeline on getting the work done?
The timeline is immediate. With your approval, Roberts McNutt can start on this immediately.
And how long is it going to take? What's their estimate for how long it's going to take?
I don't have that, ma'am, but I would say that it will be before school gets started.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Harold,
Yes.
can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there going to be like French drains or anything going under that building to help divert that water?
Yes, ma'am.
Or
There will be a French drain on the south wall, which is the uphill wall. There will be a French drain system in there.
Okay. All right.
Can we have a motion? None?
Madam President, I so move to accept the McNutt pressure wash.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. We accept the Robert McNutt pressure wash and waterproofing wall at Crestwood and building fund expense of $121,013.93. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, Mr. Hatch, since we're through with that, when is the possible feasibility that they feel that they're gonna finish Glenview when it can stop raining in there?
Let's hope that should be well before school gets started too. I have tasked Jay Ward to coordinate all these efforts with Baldwin and Shell, and Baldwin and Shell has assigned us a very good technician who knows leaks to assist us with all of our problematic building leaks. So we should see this resolved before school gets started for sure.
Okay. Board members, we officially voted to carry the motion through, Madam Dr. Redis. We did that. Okay. At this time, thank you, Mr. Hatch.
Yes,
for your
ma'am.
report.
Yes,
I enjoyed it. And if any principals realize things are going on with their schools, we hope that you will follow through up with the directors so that we can eliminate these problems before they get out of hand.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm asking this question, Mr. Hatch. At that time, the schools just closed down March 13th.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
we've been out for 3 months, beginning 4. Was there any indication that things of this nature was going on at Crestwood? Nobody ever felt anything or know anything?
If you're talking about the issue at Crestwood and the C Wing,
yes,
this was a sudden event.
Okay.
On June 8th, as we can surmise, the tropical storm Cristobal came through Arkansas. On June 10th, Robert Glover, our energy management specialist, made a tour of Crestwood Elementary, and he noted no abnormalities. Then on June 16th, he made another routine tour through Crestwood Elementary, and he is the one who discovered the issue in that wing at Crestwood. And at that time is when I enlisted MTech Corporation to come in and perform the samples, and they were definitely problematic, to say the least.
Okay, and now I like the thought, since we're talking about Crestwood. Dr. McGee, where are you? Oh, there you are. The teachers had felt, and while you're there, Mr. Hatch, they had wanted to go into the building to get materials out of the building that they felt was deemed necessary, that they wouldn't lose. They felt they could use some of these things. But Dr. McGee, would you address that? Because there were concerns that came to a board member, and I want the whole board to know what it was about. That's so we can
thank you, Madam President. Yes, on July the 7th, Metro Disaster met with myself, Mr. Hatch, and the elementary director and the principal of Crestwood regarding the situation over there. The goal was to put a plan in place to outline the timeline of repairs and also the cleanup, which entails also teachers' classrooms and to monitor items that were salvageable and those were unsalvageable. So Metro and the principal along the elementary director created a plan where they can work and collaborate and with each individual teachers to look into their rooms to see what they can salvage. And to my knowledge, that plan was worked out. Now, since then, they worked out a plan where it could be whether in person or virtual. To my understanding, when we say virtual, Metro will be in the room with a camera and they will be actually filming the room. And Harold, you can feel free to jump in if I'm missing any steps. And they were virtual and show the rooms, and teachers can point to Metro regarding what things they want to take and keep. Since then, it was brought to my attention that there were several teachers that wanted to actually go into the classroom physically. We do not have a problem going with that at all. We have consulted with our attorneys to make sure that we won't be held liable in the event if teachers take some items that weren't salvageable home and they get sick. Metro is going to require them to sign a waiver. I have consulted again with our attorneys. We do not have to necessarily get them to sign a waiver. However, we want to re-emphasize, and I will continue to emphasize that they must understand that some language that we want to make sure they understand that the district is not liable in terms of if they take those items that are not salvageable and they get ill, if that makes sense. I hope that answered your question. So since then, the problem schedule has been worked out with the building principal and the elementary director and with the teachers, if those who want to go into the classroom. To my knowledge, that has already begun. I will follow up with the elementary director and the teachers to ensure that continue to take place.
And I hope that in the future that if there are concerns or problems that you will contact the superintendent to find out the story rather than news traveling of things that are not quite told as they should be told. So again, thank you, Dr. McGee, for that. And board, we are moving forward. And I appreciate your time this evening. And again, Mr. Hatch, thank you for coming in, and all Mr. Smith for coming in, and board members. At this time, board members, we have Mrs. Huggins and Mr. Dr. McGee and I had attended a school board seminar last month dealing with informational items on employment rights during the pandemic. And I felt that it was imperative that all board employees in our district, they need to see what their rights are. We know we can talk about it, but we have our lawyer, which is Jay Beckett, and his other lawyer, Mr. Keys. And he's going to go through your rights, whether I don't care what level, teacher, staff support, for all aspects of this district, you will know your rights. And also maybe something that we also received today from Mr. Keys about your family. This may be your rights in the district, but we want to let you know your rights that you have with your family in case you may get sick. And so at this time, and what's going to happen, if Mr. Keys will come in, I know there may be a lot of questions, but we're asking you to pay attention and listen, because what's going to happen to this, once he finishes with this presentation, his department, any question that this is being recorded, he would take these questions back to his office so that he's going to do it decent and order, and his secretaries in turn will send them to Ms. Colquitt, and she will send it out to every staff member that had a question. It won't be no ifs, ands, or doubts about it. We're going to try to do everything decent and order. We want you to know as staff, what are your rights during this pandemic? And so at this time, Mr. Keys, would you proceed with employees' rights during the pandemic. And Mr. Staggers will push you up on your presentation.
Thank you, President Williams. And Jay apologizes he couldn't be with you. He is participating in the 3-week-long desegregation trial that's going on. So I have shared with Dr. McGee and Mr. Smith a school district reference guide that our firm has prepared, and we have passed that out to the district administrators, and it's a good resource guide as far as Dr. said, an employee's rights under COVID. Have that guide. It's 5 pages, but quite a bit of it is frequently asked questions. So as far as the law itself, we've condensed it to 1 page, and just want to make sure the board knows that thoroughly provided that information to the district administration, so the district is prepared to follow applicable federal law as it pertains to employee rights, and we'll stand ready throughout the semester to answer any questions, because this is a new law that was only passed in April. I anticipate there to be a lot of questions or scenarios that we may not have an answer to because it's new. But basically, if I could summarize briefly, any employee, and to the extent we're in school and we're actually on physical site, any employee that would be certified and classified staff that needs to take time to treat, and that's pretty broad. That would mean if they're treating because they have a scare and so they need to either get a test or they need to quarantine because someone in their family may have been exposed. If for any reason they are treating actively for COVID-19, they get 10 school days off, and that's paid at their full pay, and the district has to provide that pursuant to the. So recognize that the employees will be protected to the extent that they are actively treating for COVID-19, and that includes getting a test. That will also include if they were being quarantined by either a doctor or a federal order. The law also extends to our staff members to the extent they're caring for a family member. So if a staff person needs a child who has COVID or is quarantined because of COVID, then they get 2 weeks paid as well in order to care for that child. So in summary, in addition to any employee's regular sick leave that they would have by just accumulation, they get 2 weeks at full pay if they're treating for COVID. There's a second piece, which is going to be a little bit more difficult.
Cody, I think you're breaking up, Cody.
Okay. Hear me now?
Kind of fading in and out.
Give me 1 second.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay, I took my headset off. So what I was saying, to let me just repeat to the extent I was breaking up, any staff member who needs to treat for COVID-19, which would include getting a test or being quarantined by doctor or government order, we would provide them up to 2 weeks of full pay. And then if they needed additional time, and they could actually present us with documentation that they needed time to treat for a COVID-related illness, they would need to go on their, use their sick leave. And in the second piece, which is going to prove to be a little bit more challenging, is if a staff member has a child whose daycare or school is closed because of COVID-19, that staff member gets up to 10 weeks of leave, but it's at 2/3 of their pay. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out if North Little Rock School District is still in session and the teacher or staff member is expected to be at work, but they have a young child whose daycare is closed, then the law would provide that they get an additional 10 weeks leave at 2/3 of their pay. And this is all in addition to a staff member that has sick leave that they could use for a COVID-related issue. So that is a summary of the law as it pertains to our staff. One other piece, if a staff member has a pre-existing condition, all right, whether it be a heart condition or an immune deficiency disorder, and they're simply fearful of getting COVID-19, which we understand, but if they don't actually have it, they're not treating for it, the law would not provide them any leave under this expanded act. So what we're advising schools to do, if they have a teacher that is concerned about contracting the disease or the COVID-19, they would need to apply for FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, which is available under federal law. It's not paid, so they could not be paid for that time. They could use sick leave and be paid as long as they had sick leave. They could run it concurrently, but they could have up to 12 weeks to essentially stay at home as long as we're in session, and they would at least have job security. What happens after the 12 weeks, that would just be a case-by-case decision that we would have to determine, because under federal law, they wouldn't be protected if they continue to want to stay at home because they're concerned about COVID-19, but the North Little Rock School District is still in session. So that is an overview, Ms. Williams. If there's any particular questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. The guide is provided to the board, and we'll continue to stay in close contact with Dr. McGee and his staff to ensure that we're complying with all federal laws and regulations on this issue.
Unmute. Madam President, you're muted.
Oh, Mr. Keys, question. This COVID-19 presentation that was actually presented, well, Ms. Colquitt, would she be able to send it to all the employees in the district so that they will know and they can go back and refer to it? And if they had any questions today and they were rolling under there, and this is recorded, that you can go back and look at those questions and in terms send the answers to Ms. Colquitt.
Certainly, Ms. Williams. And she has, Ms. Colquitt has that presentation, and it's public, so she can send it to anyone that you'd like.
So she would send this.
That was part of the board packet.
Okay.
So if you want me to resend it, I will.
I mean, I'm sending it to all the people in the district. Did you send?
They got it.
They got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, they got it. Now, I just wanted them to read it. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that they read it. And then, and if any of the employees out there, and please understand me, again, I will say this. If you still don't understand everything that you read it and this employee's right during COVID-19, would you please type your comment in, your question, so that Mr. Key's office can get it and they will answer you direct with no excuses, okay? And so that,
Madam President?
Yeah.
Am I sensing that you don't want any questions right now and you just look at the information?
Yes, we're looking for information about how they feel on this.
So who do you want the questions to go to? Does it go to Rhonda, or who does it go to?
Mr. Key.
Okay.
Right. Let me see if I can interject with that, Madam President, members of the board. Okay. I would prefer that you send them to our HR director, since that falls up under him. And he and I work closely with Cody, Mr. Keys and Mr. Beckett regarding this.
Okay.
And also, members of the board, I do want to add this. Mr. Keys sent us a fact sheet just today. All of this has been uploaded in that planning document that I sent out regarding how to reopen the schools. And and I will also forward out this presentation with the PowerPoint that Mr. Beckett presented at that conference as well, so that all the staff would know their rights. I want to make sure that they understand their rights, and whatever questions they have, we ask that they submit that to in that FAQ document, and so that Mr. Smith can get the answers with our attorney's office.
Okay, because to me, it is very important, every staff member, you know your rights. You don't need to be thinking about, hey, if my child is sick, what I need to do. What if my mother is sick? Everything is in the packet. And ask your question. This is being recorded, and because it is, there's no excuse for us not having being able to answer any question that you may ask. So again, Mr. Keys, thank you for compensating us with a brief summary, and that every employee in the district did get your rights, and you sent out one today that was very, very important, that would let them know about their families first, COVID-19 response, families first, because every employee in this district have families, and that they may get sick or whatever, but also this will be, did they automatically get this? They haven't sent this to you employees, but you will get this also. Ms. Colquitt, we just got it today. You will get it tomorrow or Monday, because school is out tomorrow. I mean, the office is closed. So the school district reference guide, we want to have you safe, so you won't have to ask any questions about what if, and right now we're doing day by day. And again, thank you, Mr. Keys, and tell Jay we appreciate his work also.
Thank you.
Okay. At this time, board members, we have the option for reopening of schools with Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Madam President. But before I go into that, I want to go back to the buildings. Also, board, if you remember, I sent you guys some information. We had also some damages at the academy. The academy, we had asbestos in the cafeteria. We are scheduled to have that abated and repaired and fixed by next Friday. I think it's the 24th. July the 24th, it will be taken care of. So I just wanted to update the board on that as well. So Madam President and members of the board, I also want to come and present our instructional options. But before I begin, I want to take time to thank our reopening task force. Members of the task force include parents, also include building principals, also include elementary, middle school, and high school teachers that was recommended by the building administrators that gave me some recommendation, as well as various staff members in administrators here from central office. So also the board and all of our stakeholders, these options were also worked on in the subgroup before the task force was created. And they came up with some of the options, even one additional option that we actually still are exploring. We want all of our staff and students and all of our parents to know that the safety of everybody remains our top priority. The reopening task force, the central office staff, we will not stop exploring options. We are continue to explore options. In fact, Mr. Staggers and I will be meeting with some more community people and companies just next week, by next Tuesday, trying to make some additional resources that we think will help even give another option to make all of our students and staff safe and feel safe and secure as we get ready to plan to reopen school, as well as our reopening task force chair. He also will be involved in that meeting as well. So what I wanted to come tonight, just to give you an update where we are now. This has to be fluid. Everything is constantly being changed and updated we are following the guidance up under our governor's office, Department of Health, as well as our Department of Education. It is very fluid. There are a lot of questions. There are some questions and some answers I know, some I do not know. There are some great questions. We still are trying to put together a plan to make sure that we can address every needs of all of our students and our staff. So I want you to be mindful to that, but I also want you to be open-minded. I want everyone to be open-minded and I want to again thank publicly our staff, and not only the reopening task force, but our staff has been working extremely hard, trying to make sure we cross every T and dot every I. we have held multiple meetings with the city of North Little Rock, from the police, the North Little Rock Police Department, as well as the community. We're just doing we're continue to meet and continue to explore. So the first two options that we have, and if you pay attention to the governor's press conference, the guidance and directives they are expecting 5-day on-site instruction. Now, that's the direction that we've been given. Now, we will continue to explore options to make sure that everybody's safe and secure. But as it stands right now, the only two options that we have, number one is a virtual. You have this in your packet. This is a virtual. You see the curriculum, and the learning management system that we're going to use is Google Classroom. This is 100% online. Teachers and administrators continue to work on all of that in terms of what that virtual learning would look like. Then the next option we have is on-site instruction, where we still continue to incorporate, and this is Monday through Friday, this is the traditional setting, but we will incorporate blended learning. That is also, we want to get kids ready on the learning management system, which is Google Classroom, in the event that we have to go 100% virtual. We still have a lot of questions to be answered. Again, we are exploring, we're going to continue to explore some more options. We are trying to work on some additional resources that we can add a true another option and give to the parents. It is my goal, board and members of the community, that we will have some definitive answers and another option, hopefully by this time next week. That's
Okay.
a summary of the update where we are.
Board, let's have comments, please. Ms. Huggins, you first. I got your name right. Turn, you're muted. Tell it.
Okay, sorry. I do not believe that the state of Arkansas is ready to go back into school buildings, and I realize that we have other people who disagree with that. I understand how much the kids need to be back in the classrooms for a variety of reasons. I understand that parents and other caregivers need them back in the school buildings for a variety of reasons. But I don't think that putting them back in the classrooms, I think that we're putting a large portion of our population and our valued members of society at a high risk by putting kids back in the classroom, because we really don't know the effect of the coronavirus on the kids. Because what have we done with our kids for the last 4 months is that we've sheltered them. So they haven't been out there, they haven't been with other kids, and they haven't been interacting in situations like they interact at school. And so while I think that kids need to be back in school, I think that we're putting our valuable resources in a dangerous situation. And you know, from our own personal experience in our house with the coronavirus, my husband didn't get sick until 12 days after he was exposed. We were at the end of our 14-day quarantine with him when I got sick. And so this whole thing about 10 days, you know, or the 2-week paid is really not a realistic number. And I realize that that's not our decision to make, that decision has been made for us. But I think that opening our schools right now is a cruel experiment on our most precious lives and the people who love them. I do appreciate the work that Dr. McGee and the task force have done. And I know that they're following directives above them, but I really feel like now is not the time to open schools. Maybe if we had a mask mandate a month ago, we would be ready to open up schools next month. But I just feel like if we go back in the school buildings next month, that by October, we're all back home again.
Okay. Mr. Steele.
You have Miss Dr. Redis before me. And
Oh, I was just looking at the script. I'm going across.
okay, okay. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I wish we had more time. The challenge is no one knows what's going to happen. we just really, we have to be in prayer for our kids, have to be in prayer for a vaccine. I would prefer that it would be delayed. However, that's not our decision as a board. We have to follow the guidance of the Department of Education. So with that in mind, if one child shows up at school, I'm just willing and ready to do everything we can to make sure that our staff, our teachers, and our children are as safe as possible. I commend Dr. McGee. I like what he said about the situation is fluid. It really is. And to really ramp up a lot of criticism on people who are dealing every day with the unknown. I mean, if our world and our country and our state has not figured all this out now, I don't know what it make anybody believe that our wonderful school district would have it all figured out.
Right.
The case is nobody has it figured out, and that's why we have to just do the best we can. And it's not done yet. I think even though we are preparing, I think individuals in leadership are still closely examining these numbers daily. As what happened today, as you can see, there was a huge step mandating and requiring masks. So I think people are going to, in leadership, are going to continue to watch these numbers. But I don't feel that it is any way a waste to be overly prepared in case the kids go back. It's still 5 weeks away. We have some time, and I appreciate the leadership of the school and the school district and the task force for dealing with something that is very difficult. Sometimes we don't get our wish. I think it's too soon, but at the same time, if they come back, we just have to do the best that we can.
Yeah, true.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Redis.
I ditto everything that was said, not to repeat everything that was said. I'm truly concerned because I have grandchildren that are coming back, and I just don't feel like we're ready, but I can respect, Dr. McGee and the committee. You're doing everything that can be done according to CDC, Department of Education. We have to follow the guidelines.
Right.
I'm not happy with the guidelines, but we have to follow the guidelines. I'm still concerned about, my main concerns is what happens when children get into fights, because they will on the high school level. And so that means you're putting staff in jeopardy of, catching COVID. And I'm really concerned on the elementary level when those children, because they will, show up to school without a fever because they had Tylenol the night before, and they sit up at the school all day long and expose everybody. So, I mean, I know everybody has concerns, but I just want to end with saying again, I commend Dr. McGee. I don't want to be in that position. The committee is doing the best they can, but we also know that whatever is decided today may change tomorrow because we don't know. So I'm just praying for the staff, students, teachers, the district as a whole, that if we have to come back, that we come back safely, as safe as we can possibly be.
Ms. Temple? Cindy Temple?
I'm unmuting. What I would contribute to that is if school is going to open, and it looks like there's a good chance it's going to, we need to add people to that committee to get into the details of what will happen in the schools. We got a lot of people on the committee that aren't part of the schools, and they bring a lot of wisdom. We need to add, but maybe more from the high school, some of the teachers. What is it going to look like? I mean, if you're having parents picking between virtual and going to class, what does that look like for them? Who's going to be teaching their AP classes, and just more of the detail of how it's going to work, if that's the direction we're going. I mean, I know that we haven't made it that far, but that's something that really needs to be looked at.
Okay. Ms. Walker.
I'm going to reiterate what my husband stated earlier. According to the numbers in Pulaski County, it's an average of 10% for the death rate. We've got an average of 8,000 students within our school district. That's 800 children, not including our teachers, that we will sacrifice. I'm not ready for our doors to open, not for 5 days a week.
Okay, I'm on mute. Board members, you, to the stakeholders out there, you've heard everything that was said. First and foremost, we're concerned about your child. Everything is from day to day. We really don't know. But if the governor, and you have to realize, if the state provides us with funding, it may be the attitude, if you don't do what we do, then you won't get any funding. We have to be realistic. And then if the governor says, in Arkansas State Department, that help, parents, you are the key. If you feel your child isn't safe coming to school, we've just hired a virtual director to help in any ways. Our second thing that I'm concerned about, our special needs students. And Miss Alexander, she was on here a few minutes ago, but I've had 2 parents to call me and say that their children need an outlet. They can't keep them in the house. They need those special services. Parents are not qualified to teach those children. But there's virtual. And as you've forestated, you've heard Dr. McGee said he's going to deal with AT&T and Verizon to see about in certain neighborhoods if we can process network for these children. But if there's a need for your child to come to school, we will do everything humanly possible to keep them safe, but it's your choice as a parent. We can't make you make them stay, but if the door is open, you are welcome. Board members are just as scared as you are. Everybody is afraid. We're living day by day. And even when August 20th come here, we don't know if the COVID, that disease has moved up higher or has it moved it lower? Only God knows. So I'm saying to you, Dr. McGee and his staff, I know for a fact, he has sent us out every communication from the department, from the governor, from everything. He has kept us in the loop. He has kept the principals in the loop because he's told us every time he's met with someone. And I think that what we're saying, we're doing good, but we just have to follow the directives of the state. It's nothing we, as a board, it's nothing we can do about it. Only thing I'm saying is, if they say they got the doors open, we bought everything. We voted tonight, everything to keep the buildings closed. I have a question too, serious. If we open the doors to high schools, my question is, they go from class to class. How are they gonna go from class to class? Who's gonna clean up the room in time to walk out? We don't have that kind of staff. But CARES Act says that they will take care of us. Whatever we need, they will provide for us, and that included staff. But it's just food for thought, and all of us have had our food for thought. And to you as stakeholders, and to do the stakeholders, I'm talking about parents, the teachers, our workers, our classified, and we care about you. We don't have the answers, but the doors will be open if it says so. And then that other line is, every student that wants virtual learning, you should get it. And that's a guarantee from the board. And I think that's what everybody has said. But we care about you and we care about your children. Dr. McGee?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Can I have one more comment on this? I want you guys to, I want the board to know, and our community and our stakeholders to know that we are doing everything we can. We will not stop and continue to work on resources. Both elementary and secondary directors are working on what we call a standard operating procedure. Each building will have a standard operating procedure on what this gonna look like. The principals are working on that. So everybody is involved. They may not be sitting at the table at the reopening task force, they are involved daily. I meet with the principal every time the reopening task force meet. I meet with the principals immediately after that. So we're going to continue to work. As our board president indicated, Mr. Staggers and I both will be working along with Mr. Birch, who's our chair, with the chamber, Little Rock Chamber, on trying to solidify some hot spots. And with that, then we'll look at another option that was on the table prior, what we call an AA, BB, and a C option. But as it stands, we cannot do that option right now. I want to make sure I clarify and put everything on the table. We have been as transparent. My staff has been as transparent. I am very proud, and I want to say thank you, staff, for the work they have been doing. They have not been complaining. We are out here every day we come. We jeopardize our life to make sure we put our lives in danger. We just roll up our sleeves and we're trying to get it done. So I want to put this out there. The reason why that option was taken off the table, we are responsible, as the guidance and director have said, to have 5 days of instruction. We have a high percentage of students who do not have internet connectivity. We are responsible for making sure they have internet connectivity. I had worked on a series of partnerships with churches, with Innovative Hub. You have witnessed that partnership where we can allow kids to go to these remote sites. But after exploring that, if we do all of these remote sites, we do not have the staff to supervise children. We do not. What about cleaning those buildings? What about feeding those kids? Who's going to watch them on the bus? How are we going to make sure that, what about they get in discipline trouble? What about the supervision outside of those remote places? We will be held liable. It is my job to make sure everybody is safe and secure. And I solicit everybody cooperation and join us in helping us that we will get through this together. I have the most confidence in my staff, and this staff, it's our staff, because we believe that this is us. We are all united for student success. And I hope our parents, we've been transparent with our parents, our administrators, our teachers, our classified staff, every community person, we will continue to explore to do what's best for our children and keep the safety of everybody our top priority. So board members, I want to say thank you guys for your support, and the staff, I want to say thank you for your hard work. Parents, we want to say thank you for your cooperation and your understanding. Principals, we want to say thank you for just your participation and your cooperation and your understanding. And staff and teachers and everyone as a whole, we sincerely thank you guys for all that you're doing to work with us. Again, thank you guys. And we're going to continue to work even harder. Thank you, Madam President.
And I thank you, all of you and your staff for having 4 Zoom meetings in one day. That was very interesting. But you covered everybody, principals, teachers, support staff. That to me is something that had not been done, but everybody was reached and everybody had an opportunity. And so again, our stakeholders are key. And please understand, as parents, you are number one. Know why? Because you have the children. You have the children. And we want to do the best that we can be. And thank you, board members, for your support. We are getting along just fine. We're working together because we all need to be together. And so at that time, if it's no further ado, we would have someone to adjourn the meeting.
Is there not an employee hearing?
Yes.
We can't adjourn yet because we have an employee hearing.
And we have the
I know.
director's reports.
That's why I wanted the board, we couldn't adjourn until, I know we got it that, we can't adjourn until we have the hearing. I apologize for that. I was letting everyone else know that you are excused because we have to have an employee hearing, okay? Because the person may want their hearing closed and not open. All right, have a fantastic day and do pass it off.
The hearing participants are on, so we can continue on.
Okay.
Because we have to stay live until they make their decision.
Okay. Have they gone into private?
There you are.
Hey.
You are loud right now.
Madam President, we're just waiting on directive. But you're muted.
Madam President, I think when you're ready, we're ready to begin.
Are we ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You may begin, Mr. The administrator.
Mr. Richardson, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right. And before I make the opening statement, I would ask everyone to silence all of their communication devices or mute yourself if you're not actually speaking. This meeting is called for the purpose of hearing the recommendation of the superintendent that the employment contract of an employee of the North Little Rock School District, Mrs. Christina Beth Buchanan, be partially non-renewed. Ms. Buchanan is represented by Attorney Chris Burks. The administration is represented by Attorney Keith Billingsley, who will assist the administration in its presentation. The law provides that the hearing may be held in open or closed session at the discretion of the employee. If the hearing is open, anyone, including the press, may be present. If the hearing is closed, only those who are involved in the conduct of this recommendation and hearing may be present. Ms. Buchanan, do you desire this hearing to be open or closed to the public?
Open.
The procedure will be for the superintendent to make his recommendation of partial non-renewal, and then the superintendent or another administrator will set forth the reasons for the partial non-renewal. When the administrator's statement is completed, the witness may be questioned by the employee's representative and then by the board members themselves. The procedure will be followed for each additional witness the administration calls, if any. When the administration's presentation is completed, the employee may go forward with her own statement and the statement of others she intends to call. Anyone making a statement on behalf of the employee may be questioned by the administration's attorney and by the board. Since the law makes no provision for formal cross-examination, any questioning will be done in an informal and conversational manner. At the conclusion of this presentation, the attorneys or representatives may make closing statements with a reply by the administration's attorney. I must emphasize once again that the purpose of this hearing is to bring before the school board the recommendation that the employment contract of Ms. Buchanan be partially non-renewed, and only matters relevant to that recommendation will be permitted. Mr. Billingsley, please begin the hearing by saying the administration's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. The administration packet exhibit number 5 is the district's recommendation regarding partial non-renewal of the employment contract with Ms. Buchanan. Our only witness will be Mr. Jacob Smith.
Please begin.
Mr. Smith, what is your position with the district?
Yes, I'm the Executive Director of Human Resources for the North Little Rock School District.
And you're familiar with Exhibit 5, which is the
Chris, make sure you're muted. And if you turn your screen, you can see both of you.
okay. All right, I'm sorry for that. Mr. Smith, you're familiar with Exhibit number 5, which is the partial notice of non-renewal to Ms. Buchanan?
That is correct.
And can you briefly state for the board the reason for the recommendation of partial non-renewal of her employment contract?
Yes, my department was charged at looking at all extended contracts. As we were exploring the extended contracts, we were making sure that the contracts that had been issued match up with the current job status of the employees that are under an extended contract. Ms. Buchanan was originally hired as a workforce education personnel teacher, was as a medical professions teacher, and has since moved into a role of biology and anatomy and physiology, which does not fall under that. And so because of that, a partial non-renewal letter was issued, and the contract was moved from a 195-day back to a 190-day to represent her current job.
And Ms. Buchanan's contracts for last year and the upcoming school year are plaintiff's exhibit number 1, or the administration exhibit number 1. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the contract for last year was, as you testified, 195 days?
Correct.
And the upcoming contract that starts August 7th has been reduced to 190 days?
Correct.
And that's the reason for the partial non-renewal?
Correct.
And is the backup data with respect to that set forth on page 10 of the administration's exhibits? Does that reflect the different categories with respect to 195 versus 190?
Yes, sir. So 3.1.1 is our policy that references extended contracts. As you can see on page 10, the 195 is for workforce education personnel, which is what Ms. Buchanan was originally hired on as. Now she serves in a role as a 190 all other certified personnel.
Okay. And so is the current contract, which is part of administration exhibit number 1, which Ms. Buchanan signed, is that in accordance with our salary schedules and our policies, the district?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. I have no further questions, Mr. Richardson.
All right, Mr. Burks.
Good evening, board members. Can you hear me okay? I'm going to proceed as if you can. We're all here in the room together. Well, sir, thank you for being here. You referred to some exhibits which are marked as 1 through 5 for the board. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the superintendent's letter is number 5. That's the partial non-renewal. Is that correct?
That is.
So we're here tonight not for a teacher that was completely non-renewed, that's no longer with the district, but a teacher who is still with the district. Is that correct?
A teacher that's still with the district.
And the effect of the partial non-renewal is a difference in the rate of pay. Is that correct?
No, sir. No difference in the rate of pay. It's a difference in the amount of the contracted days.
Okay. And the difference in amount of the contract days results in a difference in pay. Is that correct?
Yes, it does.
So the issue before the board tonight that the teacher is here for is a difference in her pay. Is that fair to say?
Yes, total pay. Yes, sir.
And that's, you're recommending, the district has recommended a partial non-renewal my client has asked that that partial non-renewal be denied. Is that your understanding?
Yes, it is.
She's asked that she be renewed at the pay and scale she was at before. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding.
Okay. So the exhibits 1 through 5 in the partial non-renewal, that's actually not the first contract that my client was sent for this next school year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
She was actually sent a different contract that's not in those exhibits. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And do you have that additional contract in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Just for the board members, this was provided as the employees exhibit at, if we want to call it exhibit 6, exhibit 5. Can you identify what I've said as exhibit 6 for the board members?
I can.
Okay. Can you tell them what it is?
It's the Adobe sign contract that was provided in the first run of contracts to the staff. It's Ms. Buchanan.
So Ms. Buchanan was provided a contract for the 2021 year for 190 days at a rate of $52,650. Is that correct?
Correct.
So she was sent for next year 190, $52,650. Is that correct?
Seems to be so.
But she actually wasn't in this exhibit 6. She wasn't sent a 195-day contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
So her old contract was for 195 days. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I believe your testimony earlier was that you had been charged with looking at extended duty contracts. Is that kind of how you came across this?
Yes, sir.
So in coming across this, you looked at some contracts that were maybe 195 days that maybe should be 190 days. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
So you were looking at those contracts and you saw maybe this contract shouldn't be 195 days.
Correct.
And you actually reduced it to 190 days here in Exhibit 6.
Yes, sir. That's the label of the line.
But then in Exhibit 1, after Exhibit 6, my client was sent another contract. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was a 190-day contract for $51,690. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So she was offered a 190-day contract at $52,650, and then later she was offered the same 190-day contract at $51,690.
Correct. Yes.
So she had.
I'm sorry, Mr. Burks. I think she speak up and say your name loud.
Yes, sir. That seems to be correct.
So when you went and looked through the 195-day contracts, the offer that was made to her already reflected that 5-day difference, correct?
No, sir. The first round of contracts that were sent out, there was a discrepancy in the Excel spreadsheet, in which were sent to all employees, and so all of those contracts were retracted, and a new contract was sent out that reflected the current salary schedule.
So your explanation of Exhibit 6 is that it was a district-wide error?
That is, yes, sir, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly, that is the original set of contracts.
And so you didn't examine whether my client was being treated the same as the other workforce or medical professional teachers. Is that correct?
I did explore that, yes.
You did explore the contracts for the other, what we call MedPro, medical professions teachers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was the difference in my client's contract and the other MedPro, medical profession teachers?
Your client doesn't teach MedPro anymore.
Okay. Do you know what classes she teaches?
Anatomy and physiology and biology.
Okay. And do you know how those are coded in the district, what the code is for an anatomy class?
I know how the code is represented through our system. I provided information to your client as far as how the code is processed through our system through the State Department of Ed.
So, and I know we're deep in the weeds for the board here, but what I'm trying to understand and help the board understand is it's correct that of all the medical professional teachers, my client, Ms. Buchanan, was the only one who was partially non-renewed, resulting in less pay. Is that correct?
No, sir. No medical profession teachers were partially non-renewed. Only people that do not teach medical professions anymore.
Okay, and so the medical profession teachers, they teach a class that's coded the same as Ms. Buchanan, isn't that correct?
No.
So your testimony is that the medical professional class, that series of classes in anatomy, that they're coded totally different?
Yes, sir. One is under the career tech ed workforce course codes, and anatomy and physiology is not found underneath that.
Right. And you, in this review on Exhibit 3, you applied Ms. Buchanan's level of experience to come up with a pay. That's how the pay scale works, correct?
Yes, sir. That is how the system is supposed to calculate it based on step and education.
So she has a certain level of education and she's at a certain step, and that results in the pay. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you compare her level of education and her step with the other medical profession teachers?
No, sir. Each contract is looked at individually based on the person's workload and based on their individual education and experience. Is compared only to the salary schedule.
Right, but you didn't examine medical professionals as a whole and determine whether it was appropriate for Ms. Buchanan to teach a class or whether the classes were the same. You were just looking at whether or not you thought Ms. Buchanan taught a medical professional class. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
What is the factor that went into your decision?
Teaching a medical professions class.
Right, and so that was my question. The only factor you looked at was whether Ms. Buchanan taught what you consider to be a medical professional class. Is that correct?
No, sir. What the state defines as a medical professional class.
Okay, and so that's the only factor that resulted in her getting a partial non-renewal and receiving less money. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you did not examine the other teachers and their experience and their pay scale or any other factor other than that in making that determination?
Each of them is compared individually.
But it,
Sorry, I want to pause you a second. Mr. Smith, can you move over a little bit closer, Mr. Burke? I think his yellow with the mic on. And I think the board's having a little trouble hearing you. But make sure you speak out loud.
Yes, sir.
sorry, so thank you. Just on the issue, and I think you've confirmed this for the board, you looked at the variable of whether Ms. Buchanan, in your opinion, taught a medical professional class, correct?
No, we look, not in my opinion. It was the fact provided by the State Department of Education.
Okay, so you emailed someone at the State Department of Education about Ms. Buchanan?
No, sir.
Okay, so again, the determination was yours, and it was whether, in your opinion, which you're calling a fact, she taught a medical professional class.
It was from the course code sheets that are provided by the State Department of Education.
Okay, so you went to the State Department of Education and got some documents, or, okay, and do you have those documents here tonight?
No, so they were provided to her.
Okay, so you didn't go talk to other MedPro teachers or do any kind of work. I mean, you've got a lot of other work to do. Is that fair to say?
I have work to do, but I spoke to the counselor at the high school.
Okay, and what did you speak to the counselor at the school about?
About the coding that is associated with anatomy and physiology and medical professions.
Okay, and what did you tell the counselor or hear from the counselor about that?
That they're different.
Okay, what did the counselor tell you?
Where the course codes were and provided me with that documentation.
Did the counselor tell you that the course codes were actually the same in their system?
I explored that on my own.
Well, is that what the counselor told you?
No, the course codes were just provided by the counselor.
Okay, so I'm making sure I understand. We're exploring the issue of what led to the partial non-renewal, and you had a conversation with the counselor about whether the course codes for her course and these other courses were the same. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
You didn't have a conversation with the counselor about that?
No, I did have a conversation with the counselor, but not about that. The conversation with the counselor was what courses Ms. Buchanan taught, and then she provided me the course codes, which were then compared to the master list per my own purview through the Arkansas Department of Education's course code list.
And in that conversation with the counselor where she provided you the course codes, did she tell you that the course codes for Ms. Buchanan's class were the same as these other classes?
Yes, there was a conversation about anatomy and physiology being the same in both.
So the counselor at the school level told you Ms. Buchanan's class was coded internally the same as these other classes?
No, not as the other classes, just as the other anatomy and physiology classes.
Okay. And so the school was operating one way, and then you went and compared that to the codes at the state, and you noticed the difference then?
Correct.
And did you in turn communicate back to the counselor that actually maybe the school was coding these wrong?
No, sir.
So that hasn't been followed up on in terms of how the school actually codes these classes?
The anatomy and physiology class was the title of the course code that was distributed.
Right, but you testified earlier that the school in fact had coded them the same, and then you on your own found out that there was a discrepancy with how the state did it, and then you testified you haven't told the school about their error. Is that fair to say?
There's no error.
So that the school wasn't coding them the same?
They are coding them the same.
Okay, all right. And you didn't talk to any MedPro teachers or anyone else? This is just a decision you made based on the documents before you?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Smith. Okay. Get you over here where you can see. All right, Mr. Smith, is Ms. Buchanan accurately being paid, or will she be paid under the current contract, which is part of Exhibit 1 to the administration's packet for the 2021 school district based on the classes that she is currently teaching or will be teaching?
Yes, sir.
And she's no longer teaching MedPro classes, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's the reason for the reduction of the partial non-renewal of her contract. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
No further questions.
All right, any questions from the board?
I have a question. Help me understand the MedPro. Is that so anatomy and physiology is not part of MedPro, even though some MedPro teachers also teach that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. It is.
Okay.
It is an entirely separate class.
Okay, so what is a MedPro class?
Medical professions class is one that falls under the Center of Excellence, and it is classified as our workforce education personnel teachers.
Okay, I'm trying to make sure I understand what has been said. So all of the classes that are MedPro would be in Center of Excellence. So none of those would be in the high school.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And does she work at the Center of Excellence or at the high school?
At the high school.
Okay.
Are there other comments from the board?
So for clarification, she teaches at COE and the high school?
No, ma'am.
Just the high school. Okay, I just want to make sure.
All right, any other questions from the board?
Yes, as a clarity, we are taking 5 days away from her?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the main, I'm looking at the recommendation that the contract would be from 195 to 190 days effective June 30, 20, okay? And then for 21, as a teacher for 190 days at the contracted salary. So it's losing salary and losing days. Is that the agenda, Mr. Burks? Mr. Burks.
Mr. Billingsley, are you referring to?
Well, I think we're having questions of the witness right now, but I think Mr. Smith can confirm the response to your question.
Okay, Mr. Smith.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you want to hear the question again?
No, ma'am. I'm saying yes, ma'am. That is what is being performed.
Okay,
He's answering the question yet.
okay. Thank you.
Well,
Are there other questions from board members?
Yes. Did Ms. Buchanan work at the Center of Excellence at one time?
No, ma'am. So from my investigation, we searched our system in regards to this. There was no application of Ms. Buchanan to apply within the Center of Excellence whenever they split. That is how the teachers who were moved into the medical professions courses moved into them. And so there had been no application submitted through Talent Ed for that transfer.
Okay.
Okay, so before the split, MedPro was in the high school.
Yes, ma'am. We only had the high school.
Okay, all right. Just making sure I understand.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no further questions, Mr. Richardson, from the board, we need to go into executive session.
Well, just a moment. If you will, I usually allow some follow-up from the attorneys on questions from the board members. So I was going to start with Mr. Burks. Do you have any follow-up?
Yes, and appreciate the board's time, and just procedurally, we want to be able to ask our teachers some questions before executive session. So I think the board chair mentioned going into session. So I think once we're done with questions now, Mr. Billingsley wraps up, then I get to ask my clients some questions, and then the board sees if they has any questions. Is that correct?
That's correct, because the board has the burden of proof in these proceedings. We allow them to go first. They'll call, or not the board, but the administration has the burden of proof. And so we allow the administration to call their witnesses. You get to question them. When they're finished with their case, then they'll switch to you, and the employee will be able to call whatever witnesses you need. We'll have questions all around for them. And then you'll have a closing statement as well to wrap up. So,
right. So I have one or two brief questions for this witness, and then I've got some questions for my client after that. And sir, appreciate your time. One of the board members asked, did my client teach in the Center of Excellence, or how did it get to be that she was coded as MedPro? And I believe you said she taught in the high school, and that was the extent of your knowledge on that. Is that correct?
No, sir. The extent of my knowledge is that MedPro was once underneath the high school. Whenever we split into the COE and the high school, two separate LEAs, two separate entities, all of the medical professions classes moved underneath the COE. At that point, whenever the COE was started, at that point, whenever the COE and the high school split, we asked for applications for those that wanted to move from the high school, which was the existing school, to the COE, LEA. We explored the applications for those that tried to apply, and we did not find Ms. Buchanan as one of the people that applied to be a medical professions teacher under the COE.
Right. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mine.
Turn it back on.
Is that better?
So,
I don't know.
well, can the board hear me okay?
No.
Okay, that's good. So
Yes, they can.
what I want to do briefly, and appreciate everyone's time, I think we're close to wrapping up, is it's true that my client taught MedPro at the high school prior to the split, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
So she was hired into the district. We can get into that later, but she taught MedPro, and then at some point there was a split with a separate program, correct?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
And students went to MedPro, and some teachers who went to workforce development teachers, applied for technically a different contract. Is that correct?
Not a different contract, but a different teaching position.
Different position. And not everyone who left the high school to went to the Center of Excellence applied to do so, correct?
I can't speak to that.
So you don't know if people were just transferred or they all had to apply for new jobs. You weren't necessarily involved in that.
Correct.
And after the split, it's true that some students who are in the Center of Excellence also take anatomy classes. Is that correct?
I would assume that there are some that take, there are teachers within the Center of Excellence that don't fall under workforce development classes. We have math teachers, we have all sorts of different teachers that function under that.
But can a student, for assignment purposes, be in the Center of Excellence and also take an anatomy class at the high school?
Yes.
And that's a Center of Excellence student who's being taught by a non-Center of Excellence teacher, correct?
I would think so, yes.
Okay. And you didn't look into that teacher's duties beyond just how the class was coded. Is that fair to say?
I looked into the teacher's responsibilities in regards to the codes that applied to the current teaching load versus the course codes that were provided.
And do you know if there's a difference in terms of the pay scale in teachers that would have applied for the Center of Excellence to teach, a more workforce coded class?
Can you ask that one more time, sir?
Would it have mattered in terms of the pay scale for a teacher to go to the Center of Excellence? Is the pay the same in both places?
Yes, unless the amount of contract days is different.
Okay. And do all Center of Excellence teachers who teach these classes have an extended contract?
No.
So some Center of Excellence teachers have a 190-day contract?
Correct.
Okay. It depends on which class they teach?
Correct.
Okay. No further questions for me.
No questions.
No questions from Mr. Billingsley, then we're finished with Mr. Smith. Any other witnesses for the administration?
None.
All right, then the case will shift to the employee. Mr. Burks, call your first witness, please.
Yeah, we're going to call the employee. And on the sound, are we okay? Can you all still hear me good? Okay, good. So,
Need to mute mine right here.
all right, so can you state your name for the board?
Christina Beth Buchanan.
And Christina, can you tell the board what you're asking them here tonight?
To keep me at the same number of days that I was, and therefore the salary the same.
So you received in this new contract less money than you might have under the contract that you were first offered. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you're asking for, in essence, the money you were offered back.
Correct.
And can you tell the board how you got into this position in terms of your MedPro and experience?
Yes, sir. My first year in MedPro, a teacher left at semester, and because not only was I an athletic trainer and had the MedPro certification, I was also certified in life sciences, biology, and fine arts, and several other things. So since I was able to take that over, I was able to assume his position.
So, Ms. Buchanan, you taught MedPro classes for a time in the district, is that correct?
Correct.
And you currently teach MedPro students, is that correct?
Correct.
And you thought that you were teaching a class that was coded the same as other teachers who have extended contracts, is that correct?
Correct.
And the school counselor and the school system actually codes all these classes the same, is that correct?
Correct.
It was only after that HR went and looked into this that they determined that the district wasn't coding these correctly. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you feel like you're being singled out of all the MedPro teachers to not receive the extra money? Is that correct?
Correct.
So to your knowledge, the district hasn't looked into this split of MedPro and examined all the other MedPro classes. You're the only one that's felt this effect. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you tell the board members why it's significant that you were hired as a teacher who taught MedPro before there was a Center of Excellence?
I was hired, are you talking about why I had the teaching or MedPro or?
Yes.
I was hired as a medical professions teacher because I assumed both my experience both as a classroom teacher and as an athletic trainer. The athletic trainer was all I needed. I did not have to have the classroom teacher certification under the workforce scenario. But I did have 7 years experience in the classroom teaching biology, anatomy and physiology, chemistry, several other things.
So Ms. Buchanan, you were an athletic trainer for 10 years, is that correct?
11 prior to coming in, yes.
And you also had a teaching certificate, is that correct?
Correct.
And you were hired to teach MedPro, and you in fact did, is that correct?
Correct.
And at a certain point, rather than apply for a job in the Center of Excellence, the district wanted you to continue using your teaching license, is that correct?
Correct. I didn't ask to be moved the first time that I was told, and I was fine with that. I mean, I'm good with teaching what they need me to teach. And so, yes, I was hired as MedPro, and then they needed me to teach life science.
And so if you had been hired today as an athletic trainer with 10 or 11 years of experience, your base rate would be much higher than when you were hired a long time ago. Is that correct?
Correct.
So because you came in much earlier and because you came in as a teacher, not as a workforce MedPro person, you're in essence making less than you might. Is that correct?
The policy itself changed to pay for experience related to your field and what you teach while I was employed. And since that was not retroactive, I don't get credit for the 10 plus years as an athletic trainer. So that's 10 steps that I don't get automatically.
So you're already losing a lot of steps on the pay scale.
Right.
And with this partial non-renewal, you're losing basically one more.
Yes.
And you're asking the board to just undo that for this year while they work on a new policy related to coding MedPro and figure all that out. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you're not quitting. I mean, this is all you're asking for,
No,
correct?
no. I love North Little Rock. I'm born and raised in Lone Oak. I have cousins that went to school here before I was born. I've got a cousin currently on the varsity cheer team and one that plays soccer. I mean, this is home. This is family. This is where I want to be. I just am asking this one thing.
And you're not saying anyone has done anything wrong maliciously. This is just kind of one of these things that happens that the boards have the authority to correct. Is that correct?
Agree. It's nothing like that. There's nothing sinister about it.
Okay. No further questions.
Buchanan,
Yes, sir.
everybody hear me? Oh, sorry. You explain this exhibit. All right. Ms. Buchanan, the contract for the next school year that begins August 7th, 2020, which is the administration's exhibit number 1, you signed that contract, correct?
Making sure, is this the second one he gave me?
The contract for
This is exhibit
190
one.
days?
Okay, one moment. Yes. Under stipulation. Under stipulation.
Under what stipulation?
Mr. Smith and I spoke, and he said that if I could, provide him with evidence that this has been done, that he would fix it.
And have you provided him with that evidence?
I believe so.
Where is that? You just had one exhibit tonight. Where is the evidence?
The previous contracts.
The previous contract? Okay. All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Burks, any follow-up on that?
No, we have a brief closing, but nothing else.
Any questions from the board members for the employee?
Are there any questions, board members?
I have a question. I have a question for her.
Okay, hold on, just, Mr. Steele, I'm sorry, hold on just a minute.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Mr. Billings, we mute yours?
Question?
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Steele.
Okay. Well, either to Ms. Buchanan or an attorney, I want to apologize. I couldn't hear Dr. Smith basically at all. I wanted to ask Ms. Buchanan or her attorney, what is it actually that you want, and why do you feel you deserve it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Steele. This is Mr. Burks. I think she can answer in her words, just as her attorney. What we're asking for is the difference in the two contracts. So it's less than $2,000. The contract she was offered was a little over $52,000, and the contract she's in is a little over $51,000. So it's well, it's not much money in the scope of the district. It is important to her, and I think
Sure.
the larger issue is she wants to straighten out this MedPro Center of Excellence anatomy issue, and thinks by calling this to y'all's attention, y'all can maybe help her and maybe straighten this out. Is that what you want, Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? All right, hearing none, we'll move to closing statements. Mr. Billingsley, you get to start, and Mr. Burks will get to make a statement. And since you have the burden, Mr. Billingsley, you get a brief reply.
Good. Mr. Burks, will you please mute, sir?
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board.
Hold on. Ball. There you go.
The issue in this case is not about more money or less money. It's about where Ms. Buchanan falls on the salary schedule for length of service in connection with your policies that are in effect. And I guess that's why we're here tonight. The reason that she was partially non-renewed is because she's gone from 195 to 190 days. She's no longer teaching the MedPro classes, which is what she was hired and what she came in under, but that's simply not where she falls now relative to the classes that she's teaching. And so in accordance with your policies and Arkansas law, she now has a 190-day contract, which she has signed. I believe Mr. Smith, on behalf of the district, set forth the reasons that this is why it is, and we would ask that the board uphold the partial non-renewal of Ms. Buchanan. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Burks.
Well, good evening, board members. I guess this is the dessert after your prior meeting, sort of the stay for the end. Appreciate y'all's time. I've got 3 brief points for you, and appreciate your service. I know being a board member is a high-paying job, so I appreciate y'all being here. You know, the first thing I would say is Ms. Buchanan, what she's asking for, this is not a termination or a suspension. This is not one of those complicated issues y'all deal with that I don't envy you for having to deal with. This is it's just kind of a simple misunderstanding. And what she's asking for is the difference in the contract she was offered, the $52,650. And y'all have the authority as the board to overturn the administration's decision. It's not saying anybody did anything wrong. It's not going against the administration. It's just exercising y'all's authority as a board. And y'all have the authority to say, look, Ms. Buchanan teaches MedPro students. She teaches anatomy. She previously taught MedPro classes. And in fact, how she was operating and how everyone at the high school was operating was as if she was a MedPro teacher. She was coded that way. That's what Mr. Smith testified to. The counselor said her anatomy class and all the MedPro classes were coded the same by the district. And that's not really that big of a deal. It's a good job by Mr. Smith and HR to catch that. That's what he's there for. I'm impressed by him. I hope y'all are. The issue isn't whether the district was doing something wrong, which they were. It's the fix. How do we fix it? How do we fix that? All of these classes were coded as MedPro and had 195-day contracts, and some of them shouldn't have been. Well, when you fix something, I'll give you an example and I'll wrap up. I know lawyers like to talk. You could be doing something right and well-intentioned, but the fix could be worse than the error. This is a relatively minor error, but the fix here has singled out Ms. Buchanan. There hasn't been a systematic look at the split in the Center of Excellence and the MedPro teachers. Mr. Smith didn't, and it's not his fault, nobody asked him to, they didn't do a systematic review to see if this decision impacted her. There's all kinds of laws about decisions that you got to follow. Does this have a disparate impact on women? Does this affect certain people a certain way? And that's why you got to look at things systematically. So this was just a one-off thing that y'all have the power to fix. And I'll just, conclude with my third point. The first one is y'all have got the authority to fix this. The second is she actually teaches MedPro and did, and the high school coded her class that way. The third point is this, the district, and again, I appreciate y'all's service. The district wants to attract and retain people exactly like Ms. Buchanan. This is what y'all put in all those hours for, is somebody that was an athletic trainer out there in Arkansas that has teaching experience and that was attracted to the world-class education in the North Little Rock School District. This is exactly who you want to attract and retain. And that's why y'all put in all these hours. And the effect of the partial non-renewal on her is the opposite. It's taking money out of her pocket. It's kind of demoralizing her. She's gone through this appeal. Yes, she signed the contract, but she appealed it, as is her right. And, as a board, I think we want to do the opposite. I think we want to say, look, we do have a policy. If she had been hired 2 years later, she would be at a lot higher steps anyway. And within our policy, we can also decline to adopt the administration's recommendation. We can renew her at 190 days at the rate she was offered. There's not anything illegal or wrong about that. And I would argue that's the right thing to do for Ms. Buchanan and also anyone that sees this or hears about this, is that, look, we're trying to attract and retain diverse teachers here, people that have real world experience. And if there's a coding error, if our human resource people do a good job catching that, we don't penalize people for that. We try to fix that holistically, district-wide. So that's my 2 cents. Appreciate y'all's time, and we're asking for you to decline the partial non-renewal. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Billingsley, since you have the burden, you get the last word.
Thank you.
Need to unmute.
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 While she may have taught some MedPro students in the past, she does not teach MedPro classes. And your policies are adopted to be used system-wide, district-wide. And that's what has been attempted here, and that's what's occurred here, which is the reason why she was partially non-renewed, because she was at the 195 day level, and she and other similarly situated folks that work in the district should be at 190. That's what your salary schedules say. That's what your policies say. And that's why the district and the administration did what it did by reducing her contract to 190 days. And so we would ask that you uphold the partial non-renewal on behalf of the administration. Thank you for your time.
All right, that'll conclude the evidentiary portion of this hearing. And as you know, this is a hearing under the Arkansas Teacher Fair Dismissal Act for the partial non-renewal of an employee. That means you, as a board, have a few steps to take under the law to make your decision. The first step you take is to determine whether or not the reason given for the partial non-renewal is true or not true. And I've prepared some forms for you. Here is your form that will give you the motion to make on that finding. And when you go into an executive session, you'll decide among yourselves whether or not the reason given is true or not true. I recommend whoever's to make the motion takes this form and circles either true or not true according to what you find. so that when you come back from executive session, they can just read straight from this form on that motion. Teacher Fair Dismissal Act requires you to have written findings of fact. And so I have a form prepared for you that has lines on it for the signature of the board members. So what we'll do is, after that vote's taken, whoever votes in favor of it, whether it's true or not true, we'll mark on this form what the result of that vote is, and all board members voting in favor of that motion will sign this document. So the one that says motion on finding of fact, you can take notes on. The one that says finding of fact and has lines on it, please don't write on in your executive session. We'll complete that when we come back into open session. So the question is that reason given for the partial renewal true or not true? And you'll find that by simple majority vote, and then that motion and vote will be made back here in open session, not in your executive session. If you find that that fact is true, then you have another decision to make. If you find that that fact is not true, then you won't have a reason to accept the recommendation. So then that'll be a rejection of the administration's recommendation. So if you do find it's true, you have 3 decisions to make. And I have a form setting out the 3 different motions that you can make on that. First is you can accept the recommendation of the administration. And if you do that, then Ms. Buchanan's contract will be partially non-renewed and her contract will go in place as recommended by the administration. The second option is you can reject the administration's recommendation. If you do that, then her contract will revert back to the 195 days, and there won't be a change to her contract as recommended by the administration. The third thing that you can do is you can modify the recommendation. And that means you're doing something other than a partial non-renewal as requested by the board. I've given you some lines on this paper to write out what that modification is. And so when you go into your executive session, it's only the board members. The administration doesn't go back with you because they're an advocate in this proceeding. I do not go back with you because that's not allowed under the law. But I will ask if you do decide to modify the recommendation, I will ask that your board president or one of the board members here come out and visit with me so I can review the language and make sure that it's accomplishing what you want it to do. As your hearing officer, as you know, I take no position on whether or not the recommendation should be accepted, rejected, or modified, or what outcome should obtain. And I'll take no position on any facts that you need to find. But I am here as a resource for the board if you have a legal question or a question on procedure. And then if there is a modification, again, I would ask that you come out and check with me so that we can make sure that the language that you're using will accomplish what it is that you're wanting to have happen. So, number 1, decide on the motion of finding a fact whether or not the reason set forth in the administration's recommendation, and that is reflected in Exhibit 5 at page 13 of the administration packet. Decide whether or not that's true or not true. If you decide that it's true, then you'll need to decide what to do about that true finding of fact. You can accept, reject, or modify. All those votes will be by majority vote, and the burden is on the district to prove their case. So with that, I would recommend you go into executive session to consider the administration's recommendation and finding of fact.
Madam Chair, I move that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Just one moment, please.
Moved and properly second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we have the sound turned off in here so that it didn't echo around. Ms. Reedus, would you restate what you had?
I move that we go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Second.
It was moved and properly second that we go into executive session. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
I see a link. Has a link been sent?
I'm sorry, just a moment. I need to know who seconded the motion.
Natalie?
Ms. Walcom, thank you.
To answer your question, I think Brian has it set up where he could just move us over.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Well, at least that's what happened last time.
Are we getting another link or are we just using this one?
Last time, Brian just moved us over into another room.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're still on Facebook Live and recording.
To public session, so you know. And before we get started, I have a request from our court reporter.
Not back on Facebook yet, though, are we?
You're in public session now.
It just says recording. It didn't say that we're live.
Oh. While we're waiting for that to start, I have a request from the court reporter that before whoever makes the motion and whoever makes a second, please identify yourself by name so she can be sure to capture who's making what motions.
Does he have those silent?
It still just says recording. It didn't say that we're live.
Okay.
Do we have all the attorneys back in?
Yes, all the attorneys are ready back in the room. I think he's working on, oh, there we are.
We're live.
Okay.
You want me to make it?
Mr. Richardson, go ahead.
Ms. Richards, are you ready for me to read?
Ms. Williams, if you'll mute your microphone, then Ms. Wonkum can make the motion.
Natalie Wonkum speaking. Motion on finding of fact. We, this North Little Rock School Board, find the reason set forth for the recommended partial non-renewal of the employment contract of Miss Christina Beth Buchanan is true.
So we'll need a second on that.
Second, Cindy Temple.
It has been moved and properly second. You have to go through the whole procedure, Mr. Richardson?
Ma'am.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second by Cindy Temple, presented by Natalie Walcom. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Only one, Mrs. Steele, right? One?
That's correct. No.
4-1.
Okay, so normally at this point, I would pass around the sheet to get all who voted in favor of the motion to sign it, but we'll have it here at the district office, and if those board members who voted in favor of it will come by and sign the finding of fact, then we'll be able to complete that record. Now, Madam President, it's time for the motion on the recommendation.
Okay. Mr. Richardson, what do we do now?
The other sheet that I gave you that has the motion to accept, reject, or modify, it's time for someone to make that motion to decide what to do about that true finding.
Okay. So we'll sign. Okay. Just a moment, please.
We, the undersigning members of the North Little Rock School District Board of Directors, find the reasons set forth of the superintendent to be recommended of the partial non-renew of the employment contract of Ms. Buchanan is true.
Right, but there's another sheet with 3 motions on it: accept, reject, or modify. So one of
With
those.
that piece of paper.
All right, give me a moment.
I only have 2.
Mhm.
I need your signature on that one.
Oh, I didn't have a pen.
Okay, thank you.
We're almost done.
On the motion of recommendation, we move that the school board of the North Little Rock School District accept the superintendent's recommendation that the employment contract of Ms. Beth Buchanan be partially non-renewed. We accept.
Second, Cindy Temple.
It's been moved and properly second that we move to accept that the North Rock School District Board of Education accept the recommendation that the employment contract of Ms. Christine Beth can be partially non-renewed.
Oh.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Mr. Richardson?
Is that a unanimous motion, or did we have?
Oh, opposed? None.
Sure. Oh.
Okay.
All right. That'll conclude the hearing on the recommendation. You have any other business? It's time to take that up, or if not, you can adjourn.
Madam President?
Yes.
I can't pull up my old agenda, when is the next workshop?
Dr. McGee?
Hold on, I can tell you.
I want to say it's August the 3rd. If I'm not mistaken.
What?
August
the 3rd.
Yeah, I believe it's the 4th.
It's August the 6th.
6th.
August the 6th.
August the 3rd is the meeting with the superintendent search firm.
Right.
But the next workshop is August the 6th.
Okay. August.
Thank you.
And August 8th is my birthday.
Birthday. And on that note, Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second. It's been moved and properly second that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Stay safe and have a blessed weekend. Okay.